Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. So, yesterday we got our first preview of Drannor loot. So now we know the power level of the loot. We know what all the named items are going to look like, except for the raid loot, which has not been previewed. So yeah, there's a lot to discuss, a lot to break down. We have a new augment system called Sun and Moon augments, which are replacing set bonuses. So we'll get into that. I'll break everything down for you in this video, and then I'll give my opinions and interesting things we might see in terms of loot Tetris and what I think in terms of the power level and usefulness of this loot. So yeah, let's just start here on the Lamania forums. We'll go through Steel Star's post, giving you the basics, and then I'll get into my opinions. After that, I'll have timestamps at the bottom. By the way, I just want to say, before I start on this, I do have a Discord, and I am streaming a lot on Twitch these days. If you want to check any of that out, join the Discord, which I'm very active on. If you want to talk to me, interact with me, links to all that stuff is below in the description in my link tree. All right, guys. Let's start at this top. Let's start at the top, if I can talk. Hey everyone, welcome to your first preview for the loot in Drannor. There's a lot of loot in this expansion pack, and a lot of it is present in this preview. Loot in this update is minimum level 13 in Heroic, minimum level 33 in Legendary, and I'll also link, by the way, in the description, screenshots of all the loot that a very good player, very nice player, took and posted on the forums, because there's a ton of loot, by the way, just so much, especially when you factor in the Sun and Moon augments. But Steel Star says, let's take a look at what can be found in chests. So as he said, minimum level 13 heroic, so it's going to be just below the Sharn sets in terms of minimum levels, and 33 in legendary. Again, the level cap is going up to level 34 with Drannor, so the minimum level is 33. So let's take a look at what can be found in chests. First thing, weapons from the weapon suite. Like previous expansion packs, most chests, including optionals, have a chance to drop weapons from the weapon suite, in this case, Fallen Age weapons. So this is very similar to what we saw in like the Reliquary weapons in Vecna, the Ferrocrystal weapons in Feywild. It's like a weapon for every single weapon type. This one's called Of the Fallen Age. So yeah, so we don't have any information on whether those are purchasable or not. I think those are actually going to be pretty useful. The heroic versions for leveling, because they're minimum level 13, and they're actually quite a bit better than the Barovian weapons in terms of the base damage. So yeah, we'll get into that later when we get to my opinions, but yeah, very notable. There's also a chance at weapons, as he says here, from the rare weapon suite. So in rare cases, when the weapon suite table is rolled, you will receive a weapon for the Golden Age suite instead. So this is a theme. So there's two different loot tables. You have the normal one and then the rare one. Probably my guess is going to be similar to like Fate Twisted chests. That's my guess. It's going to work like that. So probably, and they haven't said in terms of how rare, but my guess is it's going to be modeled after Fate Twisted. So don't know, but that's my guess based on what they've been saying here. And this holds true for other loot as well. Like there's regular loot that's from the rare table. All right, let's get into next. Generation 3 filigree on legendary difficulties in reward chest may drop Generation 3 filigree. This is the same table and same odds as Gen 3 filigree used in Saltmarsh, so presumably this is the same filigree from Saltmarsh. There were no new filigree on preview for this rendition of Lamania, so assuming it's just Saltmarsh filigree. The name loot table. The name loot table for each dungeon's in chest includes named items unique to each dungeon as usual. Sun and or moon augments. These are also unique to each dungeon. For details on those, look below. Chance at that chest rare loot table. So yeah, we've already discussed that before. So there's regular base named items, sun and moon augments. So the augments will drop in the chest unique to each quest, dungeon, chest. And you have also the chance at a rare loot table. So let's move on. So let's talk about the Sun and Moon augment set bonuses. So this is big, a big change. In U69, there are no traditional set bonuses. Instead, items in this pack, both Heroic and Legendary, have Sun and Moon augment slots instead. One Sun slot augment appears on armor, helm, cloak, goggle, and trinket items. One Moon augment slot appears on glove, bracer, belt, necklace, and boot slot items. They don't appear on ring, rune arm, quiver, ammunition, or weapon shield items. We intend to keep it that way in future updates. So the way this works basically is, okay, so you have previous expansion loot with either exists as a with set bonuses that either exists as an artifact set bonus, which could be to a variety of stats depending on whether we're talking about like a caster set or a melee set or whatever. They can exist in profane, like in say Owl's Dread Curse, for example. 5-piece set is profane. And there's also artifact ones. So say like the legendary part of the family set from Sharn, that's an artifact set bonus. So those can appear, those are the two different types, and those stack with each other, right? And that's what we've seen in previous expansions. We don't have any set bonuses, but instead we have these sun and moon augments, and the sun slots will slot an artifact bonus, and the moon slots will slot a profane bonus. So the way that works is you don't slot like a whole set. These don't work like set augments, say from raids. It's like one individual effect. So in the heroic version, for example, one of the things you can slot in a moon slot is a +5 profane bonus to melee power, for example. That's one. And there are many, 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 many different augments you can find for sun and moon. And basically every effect that we see in previous set bonuses is covered in an individual augment. So presumably, let's say you want to replicate a three-piece, maybe a three-piece set that had 3 artifact bonuses in it. You could get 3 items with 3 sun slot, each have a sun slot in them, and you could put those same 3 artifact augments into one in each of those items to duplicate the 3-piece set that maybe was in a other expansion or something. So you kind of see what I'm saying. You can kind of pick which artifact bonus you want or which profane bonus you want. So it's very flexible in that way. Although you might not see the same like volume of bonuses. Like for example, the part of the family set has 4 different bonuses on it. And it's a 3-piece set with 4 bonuses on it. But if you have 3 items, you're at most can be able to pick 3 artifact if they're all sun, or profane if they're all moon, for example. So that's how it works, and these work just like augments. Let's go into, well, this is what Steelstar explains below. Sun and moon augments work exactly like chromatic, red, blue, colorless augments. They are slotted in the same way, removed with Jeweler's Toolkits, and can be replaced by slotting a new sun or moon augment in an existing one's place. Sun augment slots only accept sun augments, and moon only accepts moon augments. The sun and moon augments in this pack are currently intended to be unbound, though this may change before release. Sun and moon augments can appear on items in addition to the expected number of chromatic augment slots. So that just means your item might have a sun slot and a colorless slot or something. Okay, so moon, as he says here, are typically profane, although he said usually here, so there might be some moon augments that are artifact potentially, maybe in the raid loot. I didn't see any in the current loot that was previewed, so if it does exist, either it's a change they haven't yet put into the build or it's going to appear on raid loot. But as of right now, all moon augments are profane that I've seen, and all sun augments are artifact that I've seen. So he goes on to say this means their effects do not stack with similar set bonuses from previous packs, though if you had a combination of loot from an old set and a Myth Drannor loot with Sun Moon augments that provided bonuses different stats, they would work together. So all he's saying is, say you had, you know, the part of the family heroic set, which is artifact bonus. If you use some moon augments, those would be profane, so those would stack. But they might not stack with, say, the Alstride Curse set, which is a profane set bonus. So profane, like moon augments, wouldn't stack with that because they're both profane. So you need to look, and I think this is where this loot can have a lot of potential. You need to look and make sure that you have the opposite type, whether profane or artifact, that stacks with whatever set you're wearing. And if you have all the effects you want replicated both with profane and artifact bonuses, this won't stack with either of those. There's no new type here. It's not like they made up a Myth Drannor type, you know, effect that stacks with everything. He goes on to say Sun Moon augments that drop in legendary dungeons are minimum level 30. Most Sun Moon augments that drop in heroic in Myth Drannor are minimum level 1, though some have higher minimum levels. This isn't especially relevant in Myth Drannor, as only items with slots will be, minimum level 13 and 33. So it doesn't really matter what the minimum level of the augment is because it's tied to loot that's only in Myth Drannor. You can't slot it in any other loot, and the Myth Drannor loot has minimum level 33 and minimum level 13 type. Presumably you would never want to, but presumably you could slot like a minimum level 30 augment into a minimum level 13 heroic Myth Drannor item, but it would raise the minimum level of the item to 33. But you can't, you definitely can't slot these into any other loot in the game other than Myth Drannor loot, though, because it is a new augment type that only accepts augments. And the augments from Myth Drannor are accepted only by the Sun and Moon slots that are in the Myth Drannor loot. Okay, so let's get into my thoughts on all this. A big takeaway after me going on Lamania and reviewing all the loot for a few hours yesterday is that the profane artifact bonuses aren't super power creepy. The loot in and of itself is not actually very power creepy. A lot less power creep than I thought. We're not going to be throwing out our Isle of Dread stuff. We're not going to be throwing out Isle of Dread weapons or Vecna loot. Our current in-game loot is not really being power crept into obsolescence. A lot of this loot is complementary. There is power creep in certain areas, and we'll get to that in a minute. But it's not like they took the like current set bonuses. Like say like I've been talking about part of the family. Like right now, there's a plus 15 melee power bonus in the legendary part of the family set. So the complementary like artifact bonuses, for example, from Myth Drannor is still at plus 15. They didn't up that to like plus 18 or anything. And you can see that across pretty consistently that way across all of the loot. They didn't raise kind of the values we've seen in current in-game sets from previous expansions. They didn't raise those numbers very much. And there are a couple exceptions we'll get to, but yeah, for the most part, there wasn't a lot of raising the stats. As far as dinosaur bone weapons, they're still going to be king of the meta from what we've seen so far. However, we have not seen the raid loot, so it's possible, I would say probable, that we're going to see some best in slot weapons from the raid. We just haven't seen that loot yet. But as of right now, Dino Bone is still going to be kind of king, I think, of the gearing meta, especially when you get to, let's say, like the minor artifacts, really flexible, super good stuff. It's still going to be good. I'm kind of concerned about what loot might be hidden behind heavy RNG, because if this works kind of like Fate Twisted, there might be, particularly if you need an in chest from a long quest, it could be pretty grindy to get some of this loot. Also, you have to consider that not only do you have to grind out the base item, but you also are going to have to farm out the augment. So you kind of have two things to farm if you're putting together a Myth Drannor loot. It's not like if you're farming, say, like a Ravenloft set or something back in the day where it was fully completed items. You're gonna have to farm out the augment that to complete the gear you want and the base item. The good thing about that, though, is that you can have more flexibility than fully completed items. So there's kind of a give and a take there. It's only been one day, so there's so much brainstorming when it comes to the loot Tetris, but as of right now, I think the gear here is going to excel in fitting in specific artifact or profane effects that may be missing from your main sets. Because right now, for those of y'all who don't know, the gearing meta in DDO is all about stacking set bonuses when you're min-maxing. So this gear could be really complementary to fit in like one additional artifact or profane effect that you're really missing or that's hard to slot in with the loot Tetris. It's going to come down when it comes to how much this loot dominates the gearing meta. It's going to come down to what items I think have better base effects, right, and what works better in the Tetris, since we've not seen tons of power creep in most situations from the effects. So I think, let's talk about the heroic gear for a second, because I think the heroic gear is actually a little bit more interesting. So the heroic gear is minimum level 13, and it has a lot of potential for stacking with Sharn gear, I think, for leveling, because right now a lot of you guys and a lot of players kind of ride Sharn gear from 15 to 30. Right, a lot of players do that. A lot of players will just pass up some like epic gear for minimum level 20. A lot of people will just level with the Sharn gear, right? But I think this minimum level 13 loot could really complement it. Let's say, for example, I know I brought it up a lot. It's because I'm very familiar because I run a lot of melee builds. Let's talk about the part of the family set from Sharn. It has artifact bonuses to double strike, melee power, helplessness damage, and fort bypass. So you could complement this by slotting in a minimum level 13 Myth Drannor item, which gives a stacking profane bonus of the same effect, like maybe a +5 profane. You could slot in on a Myth Drannor item, which would complement your part of the family set because you would get +5 more melee power from that profane, which would stack with this Sharn part of the family set, right? So that's just one example. There's a lot of, I think, bottom line here is loot Tetris combinations like this is where I see the loot being most useful. It's going to be a good complement to other gear sets. So just a way to stack additional effects on top of your core sets you're already using, rather than being completely like revolutionary gear that's going to replace everything you're already wearing. Like, it's not like you're going to throw away your Sharn minimum level 15 heroic sets. You're not going to throw away your Isle of Dread stuff, but you may want to look at the loot Tetris and change your gear set up while still using a lot of, say, like Isle of Dread in-game stuff, but you might create a new gear set which would incorporate a few Myth Drannor items to really fit in some effects you couldn't fit in otherwise. So let's talk about, and I'll show you just a couple of standout things. So the first thing is we did see some power creep. So the most notable thing that I saw was we are now seeing +4 profane and artifact bonuses on sun and moon augments to base character stats at endgame, and this is power creep up from the +3s in previous stats. So that's very notable. Another really strong thing that I'm seeing is that really stuck out to me is the legendary shields of the Golden Age. So there's a buckler, a small, a large, and a tower shield, and these include legendary bonuses to hit points, which were really only rivaled by legendary green steel hit point bonuses. So for example, like if you're wearing like a winter set, you would get a 4 pieces from Feywild, you get a 10% bonus to legendary bonus hit points. But just by wearing these shields, which I'm showing to you on the screen here, you can get up to 20%. So double that for the tower shield, 15% for large, 10% for small, 5% for buckler. And that's just wearing the shield. So I think those shields will be very popular. And they even have some offensive stats on them. So they would even be presumably pretty good for Vanguard builds in addition to tanks. The last thing I want to talk about, which I talked about a little bit before, was the Fallen Age weapons that are offered in all weapon types. There's also weapons of the Golden Age, which actually aren't, which are the rare version that are in the rare loot chests, and those actually aren't like a straight upgrade. They're just different. Like the Golden Age weapons, they gain Vorpal and an extra 3d6 damage proc effect on the weapon effect, but they lose keen and alignment bait DR bypass. And another notable thing about all of the Fallen Age weapons, so that's the base ones, they actually gain, they actually all have keen, except for the bludgeoning weapons, but I'm pretty sure that's a bug on the Mania. They should probably have impact on them, but they all have keen. So that's actually another notable thing about these Fallen Age base weapons that are, again, available in every weapon type. They have keen, so you could plan on using this weapon from 13 to 20, and if you're just going for, say, a racial past life or a heroic past life going from 1 to 20, you could even, that will save you a feat because you don't need to take improved critical, because keen gives you that same effect on the weapon itself. If you just are running, say, a weird build for a life that maybe you don't have a bunch of twink gear for, or maybe a build that doesn't have a lot of good options in that level range, or hard to find options for that weapon type and level range, this could be really attractive. A couple other things about the Fallen Age weapons: they're chaotic, and they, again, as I mentioned here, they have alignment based DR bypass, which is kind of cool. But it's chaotic damage weapon type, which makes sense because it goes along with the chaotic damage theme, which we saw with, say, like the new archetype. So yeah, guys, that's like basically my first impressions of a loot. It's been one day, so I mean, there's a lot of loot Tetris considerations. So I would be interested, guys, if you would just comment below. Let me know what you think about this loot. Again, I will link a link to where you can look at all of it on the forums. Let me know what you think. What items I'm actually interested in seeing from you, hearing from you all, what items you think are really standout. Like, what items are you excited to farm and go for? What items, what do you think this gear, what do you think of the gear overall? Do you think it's going to be super useful for you and your builds or not? I'll be interested in reading that as always. And guys, just to let you know, it was pretty cool seeing all the comments on my last video. Just to let you guys know, like, I read every comment that's posted to my channel. It's been a good problem to have that I actually have not really, I tried to respond to as many comments as I can, but just because I don't respond to yours doesn't mean I didn't read it. And it's a good problem to have that I have so many comments that I can't possibly respond to all of them. But just know that I always read every comment that's posted on my YouTube channel. And if you ever want to reach out to me, you can always, it's pretty easy to get a hold of me on my Discord or on my Twitch channel, where I'm streaming a lot right now. So that's all linked in my link tree below, which you already know because I said that at the beginning of my video. So yeah, okay guys, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Take care.